just like your search history is something that can be used against you. You see that in headlines all the time of, the person like, what are the poisonous mushrooms that I can use to kill my in-laws? Like, and it's used as evidence in trial. Same with your inquiries to ChatGPT.
Welcome to the Byron Martin Show. In this episode, you'll hear about the real consequences of blindly trusting AI, including attorneys who've been sanctioned for submitting AI-generated information that turned out to be completely false. More importantly, we'll discuss why critical thinking matters more than ever and why the human expertise remains essential in the age of AI. Please join me and Bret Uhrich from the firm Walker Heye to discuss the growing impact of AI and how that is creating real risk for individuals, businesses, and attorneys. Real people, real stories, real lessons. Let's get into it. You do civil litigation and federal appellate criminal defense.
Yes.
Right? Former president of the Benton Franklin Counties Bar Association and former Ninth Circuit lawyer representative to the Eastern District of Washington, and a panel member of the Criminal Justice Act for Eastern District of Washington. I'd like to know a little bit more. What's that mean? What is that?
So the Criminal Justice Act is a federal law, and it's essentially creating conflict counsel for the federal defenders. So you have the United States Attorney's Office, who's the prosecutors in criminal cases, and then generally the person who, or the association who is going to defend people if they are indigent, they can't pay for a private attorney, is the Federal Defender's Office. Well, sometimes you have cases with multiple people who have conflicting interests, so like drug conspiracies, that sort of thing, or there was previous times where someone was a hostile witness. And so at that point, if there is a conflict, then they appoint conflict counsel from the Criminal Justice Act panel. So these are private attorneys who are not part of the defender's office, who have met the qualifications for the panel, and then can be assigned to cases in the situation where the federal defenders can't do it. Also, sometimes when someone has been assigned to the federal defenders and they are dissatisfied, the attorney-client relationship is broken down, then the second counsel would be for the Criminal Justice Act panel.
Okay.
Criminal Justice Act panel members can represent at the trial court and on appeal. I do not do trial court practice. I only do the appeals. And I've been on that panel, I believe, since 2024 as a full member, and was a mentee under that program for a year. And so then that goes into what criminal appellate practice looks like, which is by the time a client gets to me, that means they've either already been convicted at trial or they have pled guilty under a plea agreement and have been sentenced. And so I don't handle any of the trial court aspects of it. I'm dealing with a cold record. Ultimately, on appeals are not a second go around of like you have new evidence or things like that. You are working from the record, which is everything that was filed in the case, and then any transcripts of actual hearings. And then what you're trying to do is find error that would either suggest that the conviction was incorrect, the sentence was incorrect, and depending on what the type of error is, you're seeking either reversal. In the rare occasion, that can mean the person being, effectively acquitted, but most often what it is being remanded for a new proceeding, whether that's sentencing or trial. Criminal defense, because of course we have the Constitution. If you are acquitted at the trial court, the government doesn't get to appeal. We have double jeopardy. So almost everything on the criminal side, there are some exceptions, but is the person who has been accused has been found guilty, and then therefore they're the ones challenging it.
Yeah.
As a lawyer representative for the Ninth Circuit, each district of the federal courts has they have a certain amount, but they appoint attorneys to be effectively the liaison between the bar community and the judges. And then that can either be at the district court level, and then the Ninth Circuit is where Eastern District of Washington, as long as Western District of Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Alaska, Hawaii, Montana, I don't know if I said I hope it. So that's the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit is by far the largest of the federal districts. And so that is what I served as for 4 years because my term was during COVID. They didn't have a Ninth Circuit conference that year, and so they extended it for 1 year.
Okay.
That is a portion of my practice. Primarily, I'm doing civil litigation. Civil litigation is anything that's not criminal. Primarily, what I'm doing is estate and trust litigation, people who are wanting to fight over estates or trusts, probates, and then I also do federal civil rights, do some jail death cases, First Amendment cases, that sort of thing. So I have a pretty varied practice, especially if you ask like attorneys over the United States. You can see more specialization. One of the things of being in the Tri-Cities is one of the very few communities in the United States which is underlawyered as opposed to overlawyered.
Oh, no kidding, really?
Yes. So
interesting.
We as a firm are turning away good work or work that we'd want to do, whereas if you were in a more competitive locale, you might not have quite the same level of case decisions. And then, it's impossible for an attorney to know all areas of law. So, you're going to see people who are going to specialize more than others. For example, I don't do any family law. I don't do bankruptcy. I don't do trial court criminal defense. But you often see people who are specialized much more narrowly as far as I only do personal injury cases or I only do family law, that sort of thing. Because there's just very different aspects to each of those kinds of practice.
Well, and it's easy for us to, we deal with that all the time, in our industry where, it's if somebody doesn't understand what we do, they have no idea about, the broad nature of the different skill sets and expertise required to facilitate whatever we're doing in my industry, technology industry, right? Yeah. And it's similar in, if I need an attorney, well, what's that mean? I'm sure there's depends on what's going on, right? And there's a lot of different situations or cases where I might need an attorney, but I don't want an attorney right now, so let's let's avoid. No, actually, I use attorneys all the time, but all right. So let's go into the AI piece a little bit, because this is something that I'm really passionate about, and based on kind of emails and conversations and what you sent me, it sounds like you've put a lot of time into this too, specifically in how it's impacting your profession and the legal industry, right? And because everything I'm seeing is AI is going to change things so fast, so quickly, and I tell people that the invention of the iPhone was a big deal, the invention of the internet was a big deal, but AI is way bigger than that. Both of those combined, right? But there's a lot of pros and cons. And I've got another friend that I was talking to in the legal profession, and he was telling me that he's seen a problem there, where false citations and documents that were submitted to the court and things like that. Well, tell me a little bit first, kind of your initial thoughts, and then I'm going to dive into a little bit of some specific questions, and we can go over some of the specific cases that you shared on what has actually happened and some of the real stories.
Yeah, and I want to kind of start off with, I'm not a Luddite. I also see that maybe not because, of course, I'm not in the technology industry. I believe that AI is going to be helpful and those things as it gets better. I think one of the slides I sent you in regard to one of the presentations I provided is like, airplanes are great. Airplanes have made, travel across country or cross planet immeasurably better than what they were. But you also don't want to be the guy who's on that, 1920s reel of the plane that looks like it's flapping and like has smoke coming out of it. That thing's going to crash. And so, I am happy that when AI gets to the place where it is helpful in the legal profession or can be used in a way that the risks are better mitigated, I'm happy to keep looking at it. So I'm not this is always going to be bad. If you look back to how prior to basically computer databases for searching case law, searching statutes, the way the old-timey lawyers worked is they got the printed out book form of the statutes, and then after that statute in the book, there's these annotations of like, oh, here's this case that cites to it with about like a 3 or 4 sentence thing. And then every once in a while they'd send you these things called pocket parts where they would update based on new case law. Well, those aren't going to capture everything. Someone has made the curating choice of these are the cases that you can to include in this. And there's 2 issues with that. One is you can't include everything, right? As far as, there might be cases that are much more relevant to your specific situation, whether factually or otherwise. And then also they might have actually cited the right case in their 3 to 4 sentences that would be what you're looking for. But those 3 to 4 sentences don't actually answer the question, so you skip right over it. Yep. And so compared to what the ability of Westlaw and LexisNexis or similar things can do in having that searchability has fundamentally made advocacy better. And so potentially we get to the next step of AI being a better way than using the databases that don't have that AI component to find things. But there's definitely has that ability to change and to make things better.
Well, it sounds like kind of what you're saying, and what I agree with is yes, AI has potential. Yeah, it's being developed. It's coming along, but we can't go into it blindly or without guardrails, right? Yeah. We have to be able to be aware, use critical thinking, and verify everything, right? And really we can't. Well, I guess I'm looking at it from two perspectives, right? I'm looking at it from as a business owner. Can I just have AI do my legal work for me now instead of having, calling an attorney, right? And I'm like, make it way easy. Hey, create me a contract for whatever, right? And I'm done. So much easier than having to call an attorney and go through that, right? I wish. Not reality. But and then the other side, from your viewpoint and your day-to-day practice, and man, you're heavy into documents, right? That's what the whole legal profession is. You got to be reading, writing, all based on the different cases and everything else that you're dealing with, or situations that you're dealing with. What is so from a legal standpoint, from your standpoint, I mean, is it it's not really a tool that can be used practically every day in any fashion, or is it?
So there are 2 broad categories of concerns with AI in the legal profession. One is confidentiality. So if you do not have a closed loop system and you are using an AI model to either, for litigation or even for contract drafting, and you're inputting things that are related to the representation, you have a confidentiality issue in regard to what you're putting out there into that system. The scope of confidentiality under Rule of Professional Conduct 1.6 is incredibly broad. It is anything related to the representation. My client's name is confidential information under RPC 1.6. Now, the 2 times you can use it, confidential information, are if it is for the benefit of the client, so you have this implied authorization, and obviously, if I'm doing a demand letter on behalf of a client, I'm going to be identifying who they are because that is for the benefit of the client. You're not going to get anywhere otherwise, right? Or the other thing is with consent of the client, direct consent. There have actually been advisory opinions done by the Washington State Bar Association about Gmail and how it reads the email for the purposes of advertising and that sort of thing, and what are the ethical implications of that. So anytime you are using a system where the AI is learning based off of the inputs, you potentially have that RPC 1.6 problem. And then the other one, which is whether there are things that are incorrect within what the AI output is on, from case law citations, that sort of thing. And this isn't just specifically as to the lawyer in the legal practice. It also has to do with the client and everything else. So a couple of things I sent you were situations where either a accused was using AI after doing something bad. In that case, I believe it was allegedly killing his girlfriend, and did what we would call inculpatory queries about it. And that, just like your search history is something that can be used against you. You see that in headlines all the time of, the person like, what are the poisonous mushrooms that I can use to kill my in-laws? Like, and it's used as evidence in trial. Same with your inquiries to ChatGPT.
Yeah, I did see that one. It was, wasn't it an NFL football player or prior NFL football player? I can't remember where he was at, but I did. I looked at that and I just laughed. I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, he's seriously, I think it was ChatGPT. How do all these different things to just try to get away with killing his girlfriend or wife or whoever it was. And it's nuts. None of that's privileged information.
Right.
That's all. I mean, you're putting it out there, like you said, like the Google searches, and the courts can use that.
And then there was the other one, which was, guy knows he's in trouble. He's a target of an investigation. Goes and speaks with the attorney about his case, right? And then to try and, I guess, better understand what the attorney had told him, then goes and uses ChatGPT, again, making inculpatory things about what his situation is. And the attorney tries to argue, well, this is based on my work product, and the court says no. So we have the situation where a person goes and talks to an attorney. Hey, I'm in trouble. This, and this. Like, all right, I'm gonna go back and do some of my own research, and now you've potentially made your case worse.
There was this one of them that you sent over was about two entities, two organizations, two companies, and I wish I remembered the name, but there was an acquisition and then maybe a hostile takeover, and one of the CEOs, I think, that was wanting to do the hostile takeover, talked to internal in-house legal and others, and they said, well, we advise against this, we advise against that. And then he took it to AI and started, how do I do this? And AI said, well, you could do all this. And he's like, awesome, screw the attorneys. And he followed ChatGPT and whatever ChatGPT did. I'm like, oh my gosh. And of course, he ended up in a load of trouble or load of hurt. And but it was really just an interesting drama saga to just go through and read through what was going on.
Yeah, I don't know the entities' names. It's actually about the video game or computer game Subnautica and Subnautica 2, where they had this acquisition and like, okay, we'll give you this big bonus if Subnautica 2 has these pre-sales or something along those lines. Like, well, they're never going to hit that. And then they get the pre-sales or whatever from Steam. I don't know how that works exactly. Like, oh, crap, we're going to have to pay it. So
it was like $250 million or something. It was a big number.
Right, and so the guy goes like, lawyer's like, get us out of this. Lawyer's like, you can't get out of this. It says what it says. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna YOLO it, and tried to do so, and it didn't work. And I think that game has released now, and I don't know how it's doing. I think it was one of those really light games. So to the extent of if this, I don't know how big this was in the news otherwise, but I'm sure there were some, for lack of better words, like stick it to the acquisition person. Like, I was on the fence about ordering this, but now I'm gonna do it.
Oh man, it was just, so it's just, I guess, and if somebody's gonna do stupid, they're gonna be, they're not gonna make the best choices, but I think what's really interesting is the false sense of security and confidence people are gaining from the input that they're getting from AI.
Yeah.
Like they're giving away their critical thinking.
Yes.
Right? They're just thinking, oh, okay, let me lemming and walk off the cliff, right? Versus, okay, I know AI, ChatGPT, whatever is telling me to do this, but is this really the smartest thing, best thing to do? And I guess that comes into play too with this other case right here that was one that fascinated me a lot, which was Withers in Aberdeen, city of Aberdeen, where both sides, both the plaintiff and defendant, 4 attorneys involved, all of them got sanctioned for using AI.
Yeah.
And And I just thought, out of all four of them, three or four different, I think at least three different firms, legal firms, right? And there was so many components here to this case and the sanction results, I guess, or what happened that just was really just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and so one of the challenges of what AI has done for legal practice is you can't even just be like, well, I'm just not going to use AI and I'll be safe. Because that is a situation where you had local counsel because they had out-of-state counsel, and you need to have local counsel who are basically vouching for you in court if you are going to be practicing in a place you're not barred. So out-of-state counsel is the ones who use the AI. Local counsel doesn't check it, or at least not well enough, and then so they're on the hook for it. Another one I sent you was about litigation in Minnesota. The declaration from the expert that was used in support of a motion used AI, and it made false citations in regard to the subject matter of that. Another one I sent you, I think, was about contractor attorneys, and they supposedly had 3 layers of review, and those broke down. False citations in that. And then what I saw yesterday or the day before it's a Kentucky divorce or case where the client gave the attorney false and faked medical reports about the kid, presumably arguing that there had been neglect or otherwise. And so you are now as the position of the attorney it's not just, I'm not going to use AI, I know I can do it my way. You have to basically check anything that is coming onto your side of like, all right, I have to verify this.
You have to validate everything.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's not made up. AI hallucinations.
Right.
Which then I anticipate creates a lot of extra work for everybody.
Right. And so when I've served as local counsel before, I'm reviewing this stuff before it gets filed under my name and their name. I generally was not looking at the cases that are what you kind of call like the background citations as to like, here's what the standard is, the things that are pretty banal. Mm-hmm. I'm checking the things that are substantive, that sort of thing. And then kind of same thing as when the opposing side stuff comes in of like, I'm looking for things that don't sound right to me. The things that are very generic are the things that I'm probably not checking the citation for. Now I check every single one of them because there have been courts, I don't think anyone's been sanctioned for it. There have been times where the court has chastised the opposing side for not catching that the other side was using false things, right? And so it's relatively easy in my firm in that we have 2 associates, several other attorneys, relatively small firm, and they know what the policy is on AI, which is you will be subjected to the maximum corporal punishment allowed under labor law, which is none, but if I catch you using AI. But think of it as like a 50-person firm or a 100-person firm, or as opposed to these being associates we've worked with for several years, a brand new person or paralegal, that sort of thing. So if you have that larger firm, now you can't necessarily trust those things. So you're
in this particular case, one of the attorneys, the organization, his firm did have a policy around AI use, and he ignored it.
Yeah,
and ended up, in big trouble because of that. I think it was, I don't know, because a couple of these attorneys, they were prevented for 2 years from appearing before the courts or whatever. I couldn't quite understand that exactly what but also there was a monetary penalty too, and but the fact that he ignored the policy, the company policy, is a big deal.
Yeah.
And another thought to that too is, well, how's the because there's 2 sides of it. There's a if for a business or enterprise or company, you have an administrative policy. Mm-hmm. That's an acceptable use policy or whatever around AI, right? The second part is having the correct technical controls in place. So as AI is going out there, it's the Wild West. And what a lot of businesses don't realize is that there is capability to put in technical controls that prevent people from using AI or using it in a particular way. And you can tighten that so that it protects the firms or the organizations from attorneys or whoever that simply just want to ignore the policy because they feel like it would make their life easier. The other thing that was really interesting is one of the other attorneys was, so the story is I think there was a suit between whatever this individual and a city. I don't even know what that suit was because
Don't either.
Right, but basically, yeah, there was somebody submitted, multiple submitted AI citations that were hallucinations or false, and somewhere along the line, it was the courts that I think identified the problem. Yeah, they were going through and say this isn't real, and so what was interesting, I guess, where I'm going on that is that was the responses from the attorneys after they were confronted with the hallucinations. You know, one was like, almost like a shrug of shoulder. The out-of-state attorney almost like didn't even care, or the other thing was that she was using an AI specifically designed for law firms. Yeah, and she was going just blindly using it, right? Mm-hmm. But then there was another attorney who fessed up, just said, "Yep, that's on me. I didn't realize it, didn't know. Let me go through and do an investigation and whatever." And the court still found her liable because she had that responsibility to validate that information. But it was just really, I mean, you could almost do a study on the individual people and their responses, and as humans, how they chose to face that situation.
Yeah, and you definitely can see a variance in regard to what courts have done in regard to when they've been confronted with a case where they have AI hallucinated citations in briefing. The first kind of big case that came up was very early 2023, and it got a lot of at least legal press, and that person, I think they ended up getting sanctioned for $5,000 or something along those lines. And like it comes to like, oh, I didn't know how AI works, sort of thing. Yeah. Courts are getting less and less accepting of that, right? We're now 2 years into those cases, and I sent you the database link. They're happening every couple days, right?
Well, this one that we were just talking about was filed this month.
Yes.
This month. All those 4 attorneys, you know. And let's see, where there was a couple things actually in here. I'm going to just... Okay, so it talks about the citations of non-existent cases, i.e. hallucinatory citations. She explained that she used First Drafts, an AI-powered program for drafting legal documents. And even after the courts made her aware of this, she continued to use that AI to produce legal documents. But exactly what you said, Wilson took the position that she was unaware that AI could produce hallucinated cases, and explained that she did not even know what a hallucinated case was. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in 2026, June. Give me, I don't know that I buy that, but the courts find that explanation to be insufficient and incredulous. And basically, you know, later on said there's, ignorance is not an excuse. Yeah. Right? She knew or reasonably should have known of those risks, and that she acted in bad faith in failing to verify legal authority. And I'm like, man, just crazy. And then, so just a blatant disregard. But here's the other thing that I'm thinking: who is she representing? Yeah. Right. So this isn't just oh man, that attorney's not acting in good faith. It's like she's representing somebody's real life, real situation. So there's real consequences to that, aside from just the attorney. And it went through, and at the end of this, because they were all sanctioned, it also said that we also recognize, maybe it was a different court case, that now the plaintiffs and defendants were left without representation.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And sometimes these cases they're not short. They take months, years. Yeah. And it gave the plaintiff defendant 60 days to find new representation. And so this has real impact.
Yeah, certainly not typical. My longest running case is 9 years. So,
Wow.
Fortunately, that's not something where I've used any AI. I'm not worried about that. One other way that you really make judges mad is, of course, this isn't happening as often, but sometimes these hallucinated cases end up in the court's orders because they didn't review it well, or potentially one of their clerks used it as well. And so it gets up on appeal, and either it's because the parties gave them fake cases and they incorporated them in and didn't check them, or because their clerks had done that. And so that will get you an enemy for life, to the extent that you can appear in front of them again. Because not only have you been dishonest with the court, or at least recklessly dishonest with the court, you have also just embarrassed the heck out of the judge, right? So
doesn't sound like a good idea.
No. So again, those aren't happening as often, but they've happened on several occasions. And of course, the Court of Appeals is generally not very happy with that trial court judge. I have not heard of a hallucinated case that has ended up in a Court of Appeals decision where it was the Court of Appeals cited something that wasn't real. But that could happen at some point, I suppose.
I just hope everybody, I mean, it's going to take a lot more work, right? A lot more due diligence in validating, verifying all the cases that come through from the other party, for example, and not just assume, oh, okay, and but I hope through this and now where we're at this time in 2026 that folks are becoming much more aware that this is a real issue. AI is fantastic, but we can't drink the Kool-Aid and just go blindly.
And I mean, one of the things when I look at like the AI legal focused tools, we also have a conscientiousness of user problem. A person who already really likes research and writing, feels like they're good at it, probably aren't using these tools. Whereas the people who maybe that's the weakness of them as an attorney, because I mean, attorneys have multiple facets. I'm a terrible negotiator. I have Jillian in my office do negotiations if I need to. Because especially for mediations, because I don't like the going back and forth, like this is what the response is. Why are we wasting the time? But Jillian, you get Jillian in there. She's like, all right, I've got this. So you don't even if you're a good attorney overall, that means there are things you might not be the strengths of your practice of the multiple things you have to do. The people who struggle with legal research and writing, who might be more inclined to use these tools, are also probably the ones who are unfortunately going to be the ones who want to put the least amount of effort into reviewing to make sure those things are correct, right? Because it's the part of practice they either don't believe they're good at or that they don't like. So, and just kind of naturally as humans, we are going to procrastinate or put in less effort on the things that we don't like doing. And then we have this problem of the tools being the most effective for these people are probably also the people who are going to put the least amount of time into making sure that they are not being used incorrectly. Yeah. So we do have that mismatch. But I do think these things are probably improving. I did send you the Stanford study from 2024 showing pretty significant error rates, not just from general use AI, but also from the legal AI focused ones.
Well, and that's what this is right here. Although I've got one of the charts that I thought was really intriguing because it showed Lexis, Nexus, Westlaw, Practice Law, GPT-4, and it gives them an accuracy rating through the study, what's incomplete and what's just straight out hallucination. And you got anywhere between 33% to 43% were just straight up hallucinations, and a lot of incompletes, and it was just all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And it's all changing pretty rapidly. AI is, and I'm sure it will improve and get better, but it's back to the point that it's not going to take all our jobs, right? It's not going to be able to just duplicate it because it can't do the critical thinking that are required in your profession, and what the other things too, and I think this is from your slide deck where AI doesn't understand what the holding of a case is, or it has difficulty distinguishing between what a party argued in a case versus statements by the court,
right?
And then AI doesn't understand the supremacy clause statements like Nebraska Supreme Court reversing SCOTUS on a question of federal law, right? So there's components there that are just, as I was reading through the material, it just can't critical think.
Right.
It has a lot of information, a lot of data, and it will spit it out, and it will use the mathematical algorithms or whatever, and give you answers or produce some content or documents, but it can't think, and you can't replace that.
Right, and there's different ways of writing an appellate opinion, but sometimes they'll say plaintiff argues X, defendant argues Y. Here's what the court is doing with those, and so the AI is pulling from one of the things that plaintiff or defendant argued that the court didn't agree with. Now, you saw this before AI in briefing too, where attorneys, whether out of negligence or malice, would take citations and quotes from cases and cite to it that was not the holding of the case. As that's kind of easier to, from my perspective, to find as the other side, because ultimately you have that chance to like review, and especially things that are sticking out to you as like, that doesn't sound right, or along those things, and then you can bring that up to the court. Whereas, in the situations where AI is doing it, or if they're doing it on all of the ones, then you've got the problem. It proliferates the problem, right? Just as with false evidence that's coming from a client, right? There's always been people who've been forging documents or faking documents. It's just a lot easier for them to do now, and it's going to, assuming that they weren't a master Photoshopper or that sort of thing to begin with. A lot of times in like pre-AI, you can see things like that doesn't look right? Whether that's a signature, whether that's them trying to cut and paste documents together, that sort of thing. You don't always catch it, right? Mm-hmm. But I certainly found in the course of representation things with people, opposing side or my own, where they are presenting me with something that doesn't look right. But now AI has the potential to make those things much easier for people to put together without having that immediate, this doesn't look right. And so, that's a difficulty.
Well, in another thought here, as you're going through that, it's not going to fix people's behavior, right?
Correct, yeah.
So whether it's ethics or whether it's the amount of work and effort they're willing to put into things, whatever it is, AI will probably just amplify those positive and negative attributes of the individual. Right. Just kind of like they talk about superpowers, right? You get a superpower. If you're a good guy, you're going to be really good. If you're a bad guy, you're going to be really bad. But it's a tool for us to use, and ideally make our lives easier, help us be more efficient. But ultimately, it's not going to replace who we are, what we're made of, and our behaviors. So, let me change it a little bit from to a kind of a business owner's perspective, right? I mentioned earlier that there's two sides of it, and my biggest concern is that business owners are going to leverage AI instead of going to an attorney. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit more your thoughts and the risk and caution around that?
So, especially from like a litigation standpoint, I think that is something that is generally going to, unless used very well by the client, is going to cause more problems than it fixes. Once again, what a client does and puts into ChatGPT on their own, it's something that is discoverable, which means the other side can get their inquiries and the responses and that sort of thing. It's not protected by privilege. It can also cause a tension in the attorney-client relationship, because you tell the client something and then ChatGPT tells them something, and that answer might be incorrect or incomplete. And again, we've seen this before in regard to just people doing basic searches through a search engine, of where a person says, well, this is what, I found on Google in regard to this thing. It's like, yes, that is the general rule, except when XYZ, which is explicitly what happened in this case. So
I'm thinking WebMD.
Right.
You go to the I'm now everybody's a medical
absolutely.
Professional, right?
Right.
So, well, my WebMD or GPT whatever told me that I have this, and this is my diagnosis, right? And it won't replicate that that real profession and expertise or experience.
Right. And there's from the transactional side, I don't have quite as much concern in regard to at least them looking through or potentially using it. But again, you need that critical thinking of, do you know why that provision is in there? Do you know even what it's trying to say? How does that actually apply to what this specific transaction is? And then, of course, you get the situations where, the questions the client is asking you have effectively been generated by AI because they asked AI, like, okay, I'm doing, let's say, estate planning or a real estate contract. These are the things to consider. And so you go through the client and, I now have 30 things of like, okay, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Why did this? And usually I can answer like this, that sort of thing. But that's now a additional time that you've had to address in regard to things that, based off of your experience, either aren't going to work, or sometimes actually the things are, in fact, that is already in there. It's just you're not seeing it. But it can cause that a decrease in trust between the client and the attorney as to what the advice that what they're getting is correct, right? There are times where clients come to us with things that they have either been advised by AI or tried to work from. I'm generally not going to try and revise a document that has been initially generated by AI, because ultimately it's like they expect that that's going to somehow make things cheaper. It's not, because ultimately me going through and reviewing the stuff and then making the changes and all
it sounds like it might just end up being way more work for you.
Very much can be, yeah.
Versus just starting from scratch from what you've already have as far as tried and true documentation.
That, and then also like when you're working for something and like, oh, this is just a template, I could buy it off RocketZoom or something along those lines. We know how to use the documents. We also know how to modify the documents specifically to your situation. So like, yes, there are things that you could colloquially call boilerplate at the bottom, fine. But from this shell, it's easier for me that working where I know each of these, what the provisions are, I know how to change these to fit the transaction. Whereas if you give me this document that is otherwise from scratch that I'm not familiar using, then I don't even have that ability to know where things start and what needs to change, as opposed to going through the whole thing.
Okay. So now tell me, because you mentioned this earlier as well in our conversation, that your firm has a AI policy. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So we have a pretty strict policy of if it's anything that's going in front of the court, we're not using AI. Because of that confidentiality issue, we cannot use AI in regard to anything that would be providing client information as an input. Sorry
to interject, is this an acceptable use policy, or is this other that you've kind of put together as an HR document that everybody has signed and all the employees?
Yes, so we have a promulgated AI use policy. Of course, we are also in the process of modifying it, trying to look at those things. But yes, that is, in broad strokes, what the AI policy is that you can utilize things if they're not going to be client related. So for things, such as, helping with templates and that sort of thing, as long as you're not actually using AI to input client information. So the areas where AI is acceptable use in our office is relatively narrow, just because so much of our work has to do with client information, right? But those are the situations where we do have that authorization for allowing our staff to use AI.
So what's if you were advising just a general business operation, why should they have a policy, acceptable use policy? Why should they have something like that in place from your perspective, from a legal standpoint?
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to be very specific to the industry, right? So what are your privacy concerns in regard to, or your obligations as a business? If you're a medical provider, you've got something potentially very different than if you're a grocery store, right? As far as what you can and can't use, as far as your information, your customers' information, that sort of thing. So you have to be very specific in regard to the industry as to in what context can AI be used. I'm not an expert, unfortunately, in regard to what AI is good at. As far as I know, it's probably better at coding. I don't know how it is in regard to inventory management and that sort of thing, but certainly you need something to be a check on whether the outputs you are getting from AI are correct. And it has to be something where it is before it is going out the door and final, right? I don't know how true the stories are, but where people have manipulated AI chatbots to give them discounts and stuff like that in regard to services or products through the internet, so you have to have something where there is not the AI is not going to be putting something out the door, customer facing or vendor facing, that you don't have that. You have not had someone actually get eyes on, right?
Yeah, you always got to 100%. Anything that's going out the door, end product, has to be validated by a human.
Exactly.
Right? You got to get eyes on it, and all these cases should tell us why. All the false, citations and things like that, and all the data shows us that. So, one of the things that that's hard as a business owner is that there's just so many things going on, right? So many, just life is busy and day-to-day stuff. And one of the things that I'm encouraging business owners is just, you got to pause and think about it, and just at least put up some guardrails. Mm-hmm. Think about where you want to use it, where you can use it, where you don't want to use it, and just put that on paper, so everybody knows, and those parameters are set and communicated. And just for the reasons that you stated, because you don't know what kind of output it's going to have, and confidential information, and we have to validate it. Have to have human eyes on it. So,
and one of the things that when I look at, people have concerns about AI as far as the workforce goes, and it is going to change things. But I think also part of, to the extent that your employees are hesitant about using AI and that sort of thing, I think you also need to have explanation of, like, here's what the savings of your time and productivity will allow you to additionally do to make the firm better. So AI is not going to replace you as a employee. If we go back to, again, kind of the Luddite, we'd all be doing horse and buggy carts, right? Because think of all the jobs that the cars are going to be able to haul things faster, or when China during the Cultural Revolution wanted to increase their steel production, so they had people melt down their spoons. There's it can be disruptive. It's going to hurt some industries more than others as far as employment goes. Generally, in the long run, technology increases productivity and just opens up different things for people to do, as opposed to being something where we're all going to be able to sit back like the people in WALL-E, right?
that's the first image that came to mind, was WALL-E, right? And everybody's on those carts, kind of fat and happy. And
I don't think we're going to AI our way to utopia. That's my guess, because there's just nothing that indicates that we're anywhere close to that, right?
No, not even. But it will be disruptive, like you said. It is, and we're going to have to pivot and adjust. And what that looks like, it's hard. It's hard to say in a lot of ways. But let's see. I had a couple. I think I had something else here. I'm just kind of looking at what else I had. So, hey, see, Bradley Hepner, a Dallas financial services executive charged with securities fraud and wire fraud, used Claude to research legal questions related to government's investigations after receiving a grand jury subpoena. And, oh man, just he fed so much information, anyway, from the defense counsel into the AI. Anyway, I just thought, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and if you believe that you might be the target of a federal investigation, particularly probably just any criminal investigation, your first thing to do is go talk to an attorney. Do not talk to a spouse. Do not talk to the internet. Do not talk to law enforcement. Go talk to a lawyer first. Because even if ultimately you do want to have that interface with the government, then have the attorney be able to be that liaison.
How about just don't commit crimes?
I mean, that's a potential, but one of the things also is that not necessarily people knew that they were committing a crime, especially in regard to things that don't have, I mean, if someone's robbing somebody, they know they're robbing
There's
somebody.
the obvious, right? Yeah.
Right. Are you committing securities fraud or wire fraud, based off of this transaction, or that sort of thing? You might not know.
Okay, fair.
Right? You might not have that guilty mens rea of things, but ultimately you start talking about it, and now using inculpatory statements against yourself, you might have talked yourself into a lot of trouble. And one thing is you might not know what they're asking you about. One of the legal commentators I follow is a guy named Ken White, and he's like, and one of his advice to clients is, you don't necessarily know what the FBI is wanting to talk with you about, so you might be willing to prepare to tell the truth on something, and then they hit you with something else, and you panic as a human, and you end up lying, or you end up giving inculpatory information. His example was, like, if somebody asked me if I am sometimes intemperate on social media, I'd be like, absolutely. And then what if somebody asked me about the time when I was an intern at ABC News and I accidentally hit on Leslie Stahl because I thought she was another intern, and then I went and hid in the stairwell of the building for 3 hours. It's like, most times I'm not prepared to talk about that. So you hit me with the thing I'm not expecting to, you're going to get that thing, and you might end up giving a false statement to law enforcement, which is itself its own crime.
Yeah.
So it's obstruction.
All right.
So attorneys are not only there to help people who have made perfect choices, they're also there to help them mitigate their bad choices, and hopefully getting them a more just result.
Well, by human nature, we all make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes are maybe not intentional, and in other ways, or we find ourselves in circumstances that we're in a legal situation that we had no idea we were walking into, right? And I get that, unlike the NFL player who was trying to cover up his wife's murder or girlfriend's, that's a totally different story. So the point being for sure is that it's important to have the right assistance, right representation, and somebody who knows what they're doing versus somebody like me. I have no idea, in legal, in your world, what's the right steps, what's not the right steps. So, Bret, what else as far as the AI or anything else? Is there something that you're like, man, this we haven't covered that would be really helpful and useful to share, or really interesting?
I can't think.
That's fine. I just, it was about, this is, I really appreciate your time and coming and visiting with me today. We've kind of been all over the place. It's a little bit been choppy today. I appreciate your patience, but really excited to chat with you and kind of go over these things and talk about how we're seeing it impact us in real world, right? In real life, and both the good and the bad. And because it's going to happen more. And it's going to be in our face, and we have to, we can't ignore it. And so we set up those guardrails and use it the best way we can right now, and then be patient. And as it improves, then maybe we adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.